Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 21st, and we're reading There Are Jews in My House by Lara Vapnyer. Vapnyer. She is a Russian author. We've read a bunch of Russian authors, and she's in the same they're all kind of lumped together. David Bezmoji, he wrote Minion. Gary Steingart, he's written many books. Let me show you what she looks like. She was born in 74. So there she is. So anyway. Okay. And let me read you a little bit about her. There we go. She was born in 1975, a Russian-American writer currently living in the United States. She studied comparative literature at SUNY and worked with Andre Aciman and Louis Menard. She's published 4 novels, 2 collections of short stories. Her work has also appeared in the New Yorker, Harper's Magazine, and Open City. She spent the first 19 years of her life in Moscow, where she earned a degree in Russian language and literature. Her mother was a professor of math education. In 1998, pregnant, notice it doesn't say that she's, oh no, it does. She moved to the United States and later settled on Staten Island with her husband. So, though Vapnyer's husband and relatives found employment in the U.S. Vapnyer was unable to find a job, feeling lonely and alienated. She began to write stories in English. She was first published in 2002. That's a little bit about her. Tell me what you think. What did you think of the what did you think of the story?
I like the story a lot.
I think the title, There Are Jews in My House, really sums a lot up. Susan?
Yeah, I really liked the story, and I really liked the both women characters. It seemed to me like they were their friendship was so they were so devoted to one another, and even to the very end, they were looking out for each other and trying to do what they thought was best. I don't know.
Do you think at the end that
well, the end kind of leaves you hanging in a way, except that Raina does she knew what the inevitability of her situation was, and she left so that her friend didn't have to feel guilty.
But she turned her in.
Well, I wasn't sure about that.
What do other people think? Turn her in. I thought that she definitely turned her in.
Oh, you did. I thought it was kind of questionable.
And she sell it.
But I'd love to hear what other people
think.
I didn't think she turned it. I did not think she turned her in, but she certainly was thinking about it. And I think at the last minute she turned around and did not. But her friend realized that she could have and would have. And I don't know if she left because she was feeling sorry for Galina. And I think she left because she was fearful that she would turn her in.
Sandy and then Joyce.
I agree with the last speaker.
I think she left because she knew what was inevitable. And I think that she felt that she could turn her in. I don't think she did turn her in at that point, but I think she would have eventually. And it was a very painful story to read. It was very well written and very, very painful to read. And what does it amount to? It's what I've always said anti-Semitism is. It's jealousy.
Joyce, and then Beverly Newsome, then Merle.
I agree with what Sandy just said. Her friend Raya could read her mind and knew what she was thinking, and therefore left before the inevitable was going to happen. But Vanessa, I disagree with what you said. She did not turn her in. She was thinking about it. But then if you reread that part, she ran away from City Hall. But it probably would have been inevitable in the long run. And her friend saved her the pain of doing it herself. So she left on her own.
Beverly Newsome.
Yeah, and just a little bit of a different topic. I concentrated a lot on Galena, and I felt that this thing that starts with the best of intentions and how it deteriorates. And I thought about support for Ukraine and how it deteriorates. And it had to me a very universal kind of topic and painful, because a lot of things really start with good intentions. And she did have a good heart and good intentions, and it changed. And that's why all of a sudden the title, There Are Jews in My House. I don't think that she felt that way in the beginning, but then that's how she does begin to feel in a negative way. And to me, that was such a universal topic of how good intentions change. And it was painful, very painful.
Yeah. Merle, then Alice. Wait a minute. Oh, I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay. I thought that Galena did not turn her in, but that she needed to go through that process of what it would be like to, maybe if I can remember my German and say it, but I saw the two friends as if they were, Galena and Raya, sitting on a teeter-totter. And at first they were all equal. They had the same job. They had their husbands had the same job. Their daughters were around the same age. But once the war started, Galena's role was entirely different. And the teeter-totter went up, up, up for Galena. She had the power and the friendship. And I thought that the whole friendship deteriorated because of the war. And the anti-Semitism just came out of Galena gradually as she remembered her mother, what her mother said to her about, even in the cemetery, everything's better for the Jews. They have their ways of getting it. And I thought that Raya's gesture of leaving the earrings and the doll were her way of saying, thank you, but I have to get out of here now. Because what if Galena changed her mind and went back a second time and did turn her in? So I thought it was chilling at the end, though, just chilling. I thought it was a great story.
Wow. Alice.
Yeah, I agree with what Merle was saying, and also Beverly. And for me, I just kept reminding myself that this was written by a Russian woman. And I think that's really important. it's from that point of view. I don't even know if I can understand exactly everything that this, from that Russian point of view. But I think that's important. And also, the whole story is really Galina's story too. I think that's what's important to remember, that it's her thoughts, her reactions to what Rhea's doing. We don't really hear Rhea's feelings so much. It's all Galina. So I think it is what Beverly was saying, this change, this definitely this progression and change over the course of this friendship through Galina's eyes.
You can see where my mind is, that I just immediately thought that Galina had turned her in because Ray is not there.
So.
I wonder why, I wonder why Rhea left. Sandy.
I think there was so much truth in this story. The scene at the cemetery was really, like Susan said, that told a lot about the thinking of the non-Jewish woman and the Gentiles. I think the way they describe the difference between the husbands, the non-Jewish husband was a shikar. And I think a lot of men in the Ukraine and Poland and wherever, that was how it was. And it was so true. I just felt everything in this story was true. I don't believe she turned her in the end, but she was very capable of doing it in the future, depending on, what was going to happen next. It was a great story and a lot of truth in it.
Yeah. Why do you think Rhea left when she did? Did she suspect? Did she, time is up? Beverly.
Why do I think she
Or the other Beverly at her hand, Beverly Rose.
oh.
But if you have a comment, Beverly, you can say.
No, my comment would be repetitious. I don't think she turned her in yet. But anyway.
Have to unmute. You still have to unmute. I can't unmute you.
You're not speaking to me, are you?
Oh, I'm not.
No.
Okay. Beverly, whenever you can unmute, we'll come back. Oh,
Okay, I'm unmuted. Now I'm unmuted. I say she suspected that she was going to turn her in. She said, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" And when she went out, and I think that showed she was ready to say, "I bet that's where she's going, and I'm going to get ready to leave."
yeah. Beverly, when you log on, if you say yes, then I have permission to unmute you. It just makes it easier for me. Alice.
Yeah, well, I agree with what Beverly just, I really feel Rhea was very perceptive of what motivated Galina and what kind of person she was. And I think she realized that I agree with everybody. She did not turn her in, because it said on page 492, something like she couldn't, but what if she could? So I really feel that Rhea felt like, given time, that she could turn her in and possibly would.
You could take
So
it.
she just took things into her own hands and left.
Yeah.
11:30-ish.
Merle. Yes, Merle, go ahead.
Okay, there was a point where Galina's thinking about, they've been friends for 3 years. And they used to live in separate apartments. Now they're together. And these apartments, I was speaking to some Russians just yesterday, growing up in the Soviet Union, and they said the apartments were sometimes just 2 rooms, not 2 bedrooms, but 2 rooms. So you'd sleep in the living room, the refrigerator might be in the living room. These people just were living in a really small apartment. And there's this one sentence that really hit me. Galina would never have imagined that it could be so hard to stand her presence, that Raya, she just can't stand her anymore. And it's looking, and the list, looking at her eyes, her shaking hands, the sound of Raya's pen, the whole of Raya's being. So I think that Raya must have sensed this too, that whether her friend turned her in or not, it was just too hard to live together anymore, because the friendship had deteriorated so much over the 3 years, from being something equal to suddenly Raya's this pathetic dependent, and they're eating potatoes. And that description of how each one ate her potato differently, I thought that was really something.
Um,
This writer was very good.
Yeah, it was really something. And, you know, we keep going back, I kept going back to anti-Semitism, but it's also just living in close proximity, that you couldn't take it anymore. And then when I think it was before they moved in, but Raya, is having an affair, and just kind of how Galina is jealous of her lifestyle, but not. This is from a review. And I forgot to write down who it is. But she came to New York in 1994. She knew almost no English when she arrived. Over the course of 8 years, she developed her language skills. Her first English language work of fiction was a stunning literary debut, There Are Jews in My House. Is a slim collection of short stories that received wide critical acclaim. The title story, There Are Jews in My House, is set in Nazi-occupied town. A young woman gives shelter to a Jewish friend and her daughter, but finds herself increasingly annoyed with petty grievances. And I do think that they're petty, but again, magnified because of their situation. As she walks through gray and somber streets one night, she contemplates the little annoyances that have been building for months, and begins to consider turning in the friends she's been housing. The maze of the human mind is demonstrated in flashbacks, mental justifications, and irrational fears. The reader witnesses how easy it is to commit acts of moral reprehension, how the world is colored not in black and white, but in thousand shades of gray. So I thought that was a powerful point about the story. And it's even more amazing that, she just learned English. And, learning to speak a language is one thing, but to write in that language is even, it's so much harder. My Hebrew is okay, but, it's hard for me to watch the television, or to read a book, or even the newspaper. So I just have such respect for all that she learned. Sandy.
I could, but those earrings were an important part of the story. And it just, I don't know why, it all came back to me about hearing about the looting from the Gazans, how they not only killed, but so many people just came to loot afterwards. And I think that's how a lot of people look at Jews, is they have, and why don't we have? And we deserve it. And so let's loot.
Yeah, I don't think looting is just towards Jewish people. We can give you, so many examples in the United States. When the African American community looted in the city, and I don't think they were going after Jews or whatever, but I think what the first part of the equation, Sandy, that people who don't have anything, feel that, why can't they have it and why can't they just take it? And certainly, in the United States, we see more people driving cars into stores and then just looting them or carjacking when people are getting gas. It's really, it's hard to watch, whether it's here or, anywhere else in the world. Merle.
The level of anti-Semitism, though, it goes down to the children even, because Galina's daughter Tanya had asked her before Ryan Lisa came to live with them. She asked her, how do they catch Jews? Do they chase them? Do they use ropes? Does it hurt when they burn them? Do they become all black and shriveled like burned firewood? Does it hurt a lot? And Galina doesn't actually answer her daughter. She just kind of strokes her head, so that the little girl already knew about the anti-Semitism. It just goes from mother, like we know that the grandmother had told Galina what she thought about it. And then Galina probably had talked with her husband in front of the little girl, Tanya. And that's how it just gets passed down. And those questions are so chilling. And her mother couldn't even answer the question because it's so graphic and so horrible.
Alice.
Yeah, I was just looking at the story on the bottom of page 42 and the top of 43. Galina, the whole time, even though she asked Rhea and her daughter to come live with her, she was very, in her own mind, she was very conflicted. She was not sure that she should do this. And on the top of page 43, it says these two lives were now completely dependent on her. Their very existence was in her hands. Galina desperately wanted to back out, to say, no, 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 you can't stay here. It's not for me. I'm the wrong type of person. I'm not prepared, but it was too late to change anything. So she's just, on one hand, she wants to do the right thing. And then on the other hand, I feel like what a lot of people have said, the things that she had been taught about Jews, that, came to the forefront. So she was a very conflicted person in terms of, do I do the right thing? Do I fall back to, what I've been taught? And yeah.
This is a work of fiction. And of course, for me, it brings to mind Anne Frank. And that story is known worldwide. Now, Meep, they were dependent on Meep, and I think somebody else, and brought them food, but Meep wasn't living with them, so it wasn't quite that close of quarters. But till this day, we don't know who turned them in, and so much. People are intrigued by that, and people want to know, who would do that. And I think that as we, in 2024, I think I can assume correctly that all of us have full bellies and we have enough to eat. We had breakfast, we know what's for lunch, we're not food insecure. And, during the war, everybody was food insecure. So, turning them in for an extra ration card or some, it seems impossible today, but it's hard to know what it's like to only eat potatoes. And she talked about, she hid them and all of that. So I just, I do think that Jews in my house is a reoccurring theme. The Nathan Englander story, what do we mean when we talk about Anne Frank? I mean, it is, I know for me growing up in Crystal Lake, we read Anne Frank in 6th grade, and I was the only Jewish kid in the class, and I was like the expert, but I was a 6th grader, I was 12. But it makes you think like, well, who would hide me and where would I go? And it's a lot. It's just a lot to contemplate. And I think even in 2024, we still contemplate
Mhm.
who are our friends and that type of. Merle.
I think something that was even harder for them was they were both from big towns originally. One was from Moscow, one was from Kiev. And then they came to this small town. They had no family, they had no friends, they only had each other. And now they didn't even have each other. It was so isolating for them. And I think that the anti-Semitism, it's just an insidious thing. They really didn't think about it so much until the war came. And then everything changed. And this is what war can do. And I kept thinking of well, this story tonight about the golem in
My- I,
another story about anti-Semitism. But it's just that anti-Semitism is lying there under the surface wherever we go.
yeah,
And I that's something that this story brings home very clearly.
very clearly. And yeah, 2024, we are still talking about it. You know, I have a security guard here all day. If you had told me that, I don't know, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, that we'd have to have a full security guard, I just want to believe it. But now, you know, it's definitely, it feels good to have that person here. And you know, sometimes we have two. On Sunday morning, we have two. Susan.
Well, one of the things too that struck me is that even though Galina came from a Catholic family and Raya from a Jewish family, neither one of them ever had any religious training. Galina didn't go to church. Raya never went to synagogue. They, as far as the religion was concerned, they were away from it. It was just the culture that was in there, you know, was inside them. But the fact that they had no, the religion was unimportant to both of them. And I found that very, you know, kind of eye-opening and interesting. And just to bring something, when you talk about the stranger, say, in your milieu, has anybody heard the latest from He Who Shall Not Be Mentioned? That immigrant crime is the worst crime that has ever happened in this country. It's the most, I mean, that's incredible.
Listen, he just lies, lies, lies. And I'm sure there are statistics that that will disprove that, you know.
Oh, it's already been disproven.
I mean, they're hardworking, they add to our society, they do jobs that, you know, people
Right.
don't want to do. It's really, and yeah.
And that's like, to him, the stranger in your midst.
Mhm.
Sandy, all of that.
You know, I didn't grow up in Highland Park or the North Shore. I grew up on the west side of Chicago. And there were a lot of Jewish neighborhoods in Chicago, but I lived about 2 good blocks west of there. And what did they call my neighborhood? I grew up in St. Mel's Parish. It was full of Catholic churches. We played with the kids. The building I lived in had the biggest yard. We had a very large yard, and it was all concrete. So it was great for playing hopscotch and all the games. And the kids all came to my yard to play. The Italians, the Irish, the Greeks in our neighborhood. But as soon as there was anything going on, they started saying, "You dirty Jews." To me, my cousins, anything happened. It was World War II during those years. And the church, there were so many Catholic churches. Later in my life, my very dearest and best friend was Italian, and strong Catholic. Her sister was a nun. I mean, I have been surrounded by Catholics all my adult life, but during my young life, as soon as something would happen, either in the news or something in the neighborhood, they would start calling us dirty Jews, throwing rocks. Strange kids would throw rocks at us as we walked to school, to the public school. And they're taught that. They were taught that in their church. I don't think it's that way today at all. But the Catholic Church in the United States was very guilty of passing anti-Semitism on.
Yeah, listen, I think that also in Europe as well. Merle, what were you gonna say?
Well, in Nazi Germany, there was always this emphasis on who is the pure Aryan and do you look right? Do you have blonde hair and blue eyes? Well, when Galina and Raya went to the department store, they tried on a dress and they looked like twins. And it turns out they're both slim and slender, blonde, blue eyes. And yet somehow Galina wanted to make it so that in her own mind, I think she was prettier, better. There was a man who said she was a Slavic beauty, her nose turned up. She found a way to think of herself as prettier than Raya, that Raya's hips weren't right, the way she walked was a little too flirtatious. Her mother would have called her a whore, in fact, she said. But they really were almost like twins. But because she was Jewish, she found a way to say her looks were different, her looks were less beautiful. Just any way she could find in her mind to make Raya less than herself, she did it.
Yeah. And I think that all of those things added up to her being uncomfortable living together in close quarters. They don't talk a lot about the daughters, and they would feel about that. And why do you think Raya left the beautiful earrings? I was dying to see what the earrings look like because, they matched her eyes and, obviously she felt so beautiful when she had those earrings in. Alice?
I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not sure, but this kind of goes to what Earl was just saying. I mean, I really feel the story was a lot about what you absorb and learn from your culture. And then Galina had this conflict about what she had grown up thinking about Jewish people and what she thought was the right thing. So it was this constant conflict. I feel like this whole story was different examples of that conflict in her mind. She was drawn to trying to do the right thing, and then she got pulled back by what she had grown up thinking and learning and just taking in, living in Moscow and how that was, drummed into her basically. So I think that, to me, that was the whole dynamic of the story, was this constant conflict in Galina's mind of what she should do.
There was, obviously she was conflicted. I do think it's funny that my mind went to, oh, she must have turned them in. But maybe I think she shocked herself and realized that, she was starting to go down a path that was irreversible and morally corrupt and not the right thing to do. Why do you think Raya left earrings?
I don't know, was it a test of Galina?
I don't
You know,
know.
would she do the right thing? I don't know.
Well,
I think it was her way of saying thank you. I think she knew Galena would not sell those earrings. I think so. They had both mentioned that they read Anna Karenina, that was one of their favorite books, and that neither one of them found the ending depressing. Well, the ending is Anna jumps in front of a train. There's a suicide at the end. But she said that Galena envied Anna's ability to just walk out the door. Anna doesn't stay with her husband. So I thought that was a very interesting reference to literature, because there's no way that Galena is going to walk out the door. Neither of them is going to walk out the door. So to be jealous of a person who commits suicide is a pretty sad statement there. So
welcome, Izzy. You are the only one here with me, but we have all of our friends online.
Okay, because I thought you wrote me and said they were meeting.
It's both. It was both.
Oh, it's both.
I mean, from here on out, it's going to be both. Okay. And again, I will send you. We're March 20th. I'll be in Israel, and we'll put the stories out because we are coming to the end of this. So we're going on. Izzy, what did you think of the story? There are Jews in my house.
Oh my God, I thought that woman was the most selfish, obnoxious person.
Wait, who did you think was selfish, Rhea or Galena? The Jewish one?
No, not the Jewish one.
Galena?
She was so jealous of.
Yeah.
It was just
But,
horrible.
but she hid them.
She didn't until she realized that she was getting a baby.
Yeah.
And that, she wanted to. I liked her at the beginning. She said her there.
Yeah.
But she was actually thinking of it.
I thought she was
So I
gonna
thought
turn.
she was gonna turn, she was walking towards it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she tried her best, but she also, the other one, the Jewish one,
Rhea.
she kind of knew that because that's when she left the apartment. She was instinctive enough to know that she
Right.
had the welcome of her. That's why she was so nervous for the country.
And I do
It's a
think,
sad story.
yeah, it's a sad story, and I think it's interesting. Like we can imagine what happened to Galena. We don't know what happened to Rhea. You know, probably killed, but
No place to go.
no place to go, and she has a child, and she has no money, and
Yeah, it's a sad story. It's a sad story.
very, 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 very sad.
When I saw this movie,
Can you guys hear
can you
Izzy?
tell me, I saw this movie Saturday night, which is, oh, I don't know the name, but it was about this Nazi family that was living right outside the wall of Auschwitz.
Oh, is it a new movie?
Yeah, it's a new movie,
Yeah.
and it was an Auschwitz family, it was, I forgot what his name was, Alfred, whatever. And his family lived normally, and all the Jewish people were over on the other side of the wall, and it was horrifying, it was horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, I have said this many, many times before. I could have a short story group, a book group where you only read Holocaust literature. And I believe that as survivors are dying, that there'll be, another spurt of even more literature for us. And it's hard, really hard. And there's some wonderful books out there and so on and so forth, but it's just difficult.
I didn't suggest anybody to this movie.
Okay,
It's just.
right, okay. So, I just, this is this story is the title piece for a book called There Are Jews in My House. All but two of the stories are told through the perspective of a child, but this wasn't. Yeah, you know about this one. The collection of short stories is set in different places during different time periods, but the stories are strung together on a thread of displacement. Some of the characters have left their homes for new physical landscapes. Other characters displace emotions and find their interactions with family and friends to be confusing and troubling. Each story begins in a quiet, recognizable space, in a kitchen, on a public transportation, in a waiting room. But Vapnyer quickly moves us from the comfortable reality of everyday living into the maze of human mind. This reviewer says a powerful, emotionally complicated, and evocative body of work, a collection worth reading again and again. I agree with that. We at the beginning, you don't realize how dark this is going to be. It does start with them eating potatoes, and that can't be good. But I think that the end is absolutely heartbreaking and chilling, just chilling of what's happening. So before you came in, I said, this obviously reminds me of Anne Frank, because it's Anne Frank, this is fiction, Anne Frank, everybody knows that story, and right, and somebody turned them in, probably for racial reasons. And I think, Merle, you read us the beautiful part about when she couldn't answer her kids, how do they find the Jews? And on page 492, why are you not in bed? Are they sleeping? Galina asked. Tanya shook her head. They're gone, she said. Galina walked to the table, the dripping boots still clutched in her hands. The foolish, irrational questions were pouring out of her mouth. What do you mean gone? Where? When did they leave? Why do you have the doll? Did they say anything? Then she heard herself screaming. What do you mean gone? Do you think in the end, when they left, she felt bad?
For a minute.
Izzy said for a minute. What do you think? Anyone?
Yeah, I think she felt really bad because she steps on the doll, and what comes to mind is a dead child. And I think that's what she's worried about, that perhaps Lisa won't really survive the war. And I think she was so ambivalent toward the end about should she turn them in, shouldn't she turn them in, and she does not turn them in. And they leave, and everything she has done up to this point to try to save them, it's over now. They're probably going to be caught. So I think she's really, really frightened and, very, very sad at the end.
I can't see anybody because on top.
Yeah. Right,
Maybe I could do it on my phone.
No. Here, I'll.
Lower it?
I can do
Because I can't
this.
see.
How's that?
Okay.
You can hear the city. Tanya, the daughter, walked to her bed, began undressing. She spoke in an odd, tired voice. They got dressed and left right after you left. I also think that, though, that is so telling, that the minute Galina left, they left. And that why wouldn't Lisa need the doll? I mean, Lisa was very sickly, and they had tried to get her medicine. And again, that the foreshadowing, it's a short story, so we don't know what happened, is that they're not going to make it. Yes, Beverly Yusuf.
So maybe, Galena begins the story doing a really good humanitarian deed. And perhaps Rhea leaving is doing the same thing that Galena did in the beginning, because she knows that it's not going to end well. And if she gets caught there, they're all going to die. If Galena turns her in, pardon me, that's bad also. So maybe somewhere leaving is also a very good deed, that she's going to save her friend from having to make a bad decision, from getting caught in the house with them. There's certainly plenty of time to think those things through. So in a way, maybe they're both heroic. Because Galena doesn't turn her in yet.
Right. I mean, she was practicing her German.
Mhm.
I don't know. I got the feeling in the end that she was jealous, she was anti-Semitic, and do you think Galena was anti-Semitic?
I didn't get that.
Joyce, yes?
I didn't get that.
Her mother had told her that she was so, her
Right.
mother was very held that into, I think underneath she was.
Right. I think, again, looking, it's gotta be, in the 40s, with everything that was going on and all the propaganda, it was hard, not to be anti-Semitic. All the woes of the world were blamed on the Jews, and, the financial conditions, the war, the this, the that, so I'm just not sure. Does this story, do you want to read more by this author? Would you, yeah, she's a little aggressive. Merle,
I thought that Galena was just starting to dislike Raya, aside from being a Jew. Raya's husband is described as being, Raya says, he's my ugly gosling. He wasn't good looking. And yet they loved each other. Even though she had an affair, they loved each other. The other marriage, it wasn't good because although Galena's husband did not beat her, he was a quiet drunk. He would just come home and just fall on the bed. He couldn't participate. And yet when he wasn't drunk, their daughter liked him better than she liked Galena. Tanya liked her father better than Galena. So Galena just was not she was not happy in her marriage. And she just saw that Raya had so much more than she did in the marriage and just in life. She just seemed like a jollier person, happier with life until the war came.
right.
So she was jealous of her anyway. So, well, just add in the anti-Semitism, and then it was an impossible situation. She said she couldn't even stand being in the presence of Raya after this friendship of 3 years. They had known each other already.
What was I gonna say? Any other comments about this? I want to talk about the next story, and because I haven't read it yet, but I can see by the it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, what is this?
Oh, gosh.
It's set up like a page of Talmud.
Like a what?
Page of Talmud.
Oh,
The hand I think is just, but the way it's 15B, 15A, the way usually in the middle is the part that they're talking about from Torah, or Talmud is Gomorrah, and
Vanessa, I'm looking at the Hebrew, and the Hebrew, it's the same exact words on every single page, every single line.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
Well, not,
gosh.
I mean, a couple, if you go in a little bit, it's a little, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look at this. And it's really small.
Okay.
oh, it's terrible printing.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to look into it and see,
How,
see,
how are we gonna read that, Vanessa?
I'd have to read it with a
I-
magnifying glass.
I've got it on my iPad, and I can't make it bigger like you can
Really?
on other things.
let me just read you a little bit. It was a limited edition. Yeah, we know why. It was published in 2004, and the limited edition features oversized pages, which makes sense. Only 231 the form of Apicorus, and Apicorus is someone who, doesn't follow halacha. So the Apicorus sleuth is someone, we know what a sleuth is based on that of Talmud, in which a central sacred text is surrounded by the commentaries of scholars and sages accumulated over more than 1,000 years. This layout evolved through centuries of copying, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I mean, we can decide, we have 5 minutes here. We can decide we can skip this one, which will put us back, eventually put us back on track. It's very difficult to read.
Yeah.
Vanessa, I think you should skip it because even on Kindle, you can't enlarge it. I think you should skip this story.
I agree.
But now we're going on to Mr. Mitochondria
Great.
by Aryeh Lev Stolman,
Thank you. Look how long it is too.
which, Apicorus, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have never, I've just never seen it that, you're welcome, and we'll have to let everybody know.
Vanessa, do we have another book after this?
Well, I mean, I don't, I have to look at how the calendar lays out, if we'll start it in April or May, because I'm gonna be gone July, and then, but I'll be back in August, and we could take it up in August, and, I have a book in mind, and we read part of it, I think in my evening book club, but, it's just, here we go, Omer Friedlander, and it's called, here it is, The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land. And it's stories about Israel that are poignant, but not sad, or, I mean, I think some of these stories were really hard. Dear Yassine, there was a lot going on here. So, I'll make sure everybody knows that we, are skipping the next story, and, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then eventually.
Vanessa,
Yeah.
if I could ask you about the print in the next book that we're going to use, because this book was just, the print is just way too small for me.
Right, I'll look and see if there's a large print of, The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land.
The class started at 10.
What is the name of that? The Man Who Sold what?
Wait a minute, let me just go to,
So for me.
The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land by
Air.
Lander, and I'll send this to you tomorrow. I have a lot, I'm teaching a lot today, so I don't know that I'll get to it today.
Boy, a large print book would be wonderful.
So, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
See you
Bye.